So, the Nintendo Switch 2 has been announced, and we are now officially in the countdown of the emergence of a new Nintendo system. And while that is exciting and the rumor mills are flowing and the game announced, we're just waiting, we're drooling, we're salivating until April 2nd, where we get all this information about the OS and the console and the games. I wanted to take a step back and recognize where we came from. To give a quick history lesson, Nintendo hasn't been in the greatest spots in terms of console gaming. People forget that after the Super Nintendo, it kind of was on a downward trend with the N64 and the GameCube, and then the Wii came out and pulled out a miracle, and then the Wii U happened and we fell right into a ditch. It's like climbing Mount Everest and falling into the Grand Canyon. But the Switch came and showed that they could still create amazing console experiences and quality games, being one of the most successful Nintendo consoles ever. I think officially it is the most successful Nintendo console ever, maybe trailing the DS, I believe. And that might change by the time this video comes out. But with that being stated, before we get too deep into the Switch 2 hype cycle and people get the console and start tearing it down, modding, hacking it, and just getting excited about the new games, Mario Kart 9, 10, 11, whatever, I wanted to take some time to properly express my love and appreciation for titles on the Switch that I either genuinely believe deserve a sequel of some sort or I just love intrinsically. Now, this isn't going to be one of those like massive review videos where I sit here and talk about the graphics and the technical specs. I just want to talk about my experiences with these games and how much they mean to me personally from the Switch era. And I figured one of the first games I should touch is a game that actually came out the year of the console's release. And not only because it shares my birthday, along with Tupac. Anywho, the point I'm making is, today we're addressing ARMS. So ARMS came out June 16th, 2017. It was a fighting game. It's a very non-traditional fighting game, or as I really should say, it's the most Nintendo-like fighting game we've ever gotten. See, it's kind of like Punch-Out, except, you know, someone in the development team was a really big fan of One Piece. Not that I'm mad, it's quality, approaching quality, respecting game, recognizing game. You know, I can't be mad at that. But ARMS' gimmick is simple. With the Joy-Cons, you can stretch your arms across the screen and punch your opponent. The game gave you a variety of fighters with a variety of stages, with a variety of arms. You weren't even, which is kind of weird in retrospect, because the things that change are the fists, not the arms themselves. So why is it called? You know what? Maybe I'm thinking too much into this. Let me just stop asking questions before I get myself in trouble from the Nintendo ninjas. I know they're lurking. And although the game didn't sell insanely well, maybe in comparison to its contemporaries like Splatoon that came out a month later, which is also 10 years old this year. What the 10 years old? Oh my God, the original game came out in 2015? They weren't joking. The older you get, the faster time flies. Oh my God. And for me, I was relatively enamored probably after the second trailer. The first trailer gauged the interest, but that second trailer definitely got me way more invested. And the internet also got invested when we started revealing some of the characters, and some character designs just stuck out more than others.
Why would you do this, Nintendo? Why? She's bad!
R.I.P. Etika. Joy-Con boys for life. ARMS became kind of its own type of beast, and for the 6 months after its release, got consistent support with free game modes, updates, new characters and stages, and overall an improved experience. ARMS doesn't have the same love and longevity as its older brother Splatoon does, but I think very much it earned its own place into the Nintendo IP echelon. ARMS is just a fun fighting game that actually has a lot of more technical spirit to it, and gave a level of customization for your fighter that I have never seen in a fighting game. You literally could switch out the arm of every character and change it to whatever you want to fit the playstyle that you want it to play, on top of each character having their own unique attributes and skills. For example, one of my favorite mains is Lollipop. No, it's not for the clussy, don't get into it, please. That doesn't hurt, but that's not the point. But when she was released, not only did she have her own unique arms and stage, and her own obviously beautiful character design, but the point is that she also had her own unique traits with the inflatable body shielding gimmick that also allowed her to propel herself into the air with a high jump. It was cool. It was interesting. Sexy. But as a result, you ended up getting a character that had a very unique range of motion and a very unique way of moving around the map with different types of weapons. Now, I wouldn't say ARMS was perfect by any means, because ARMS' biggest problem is that for someone who wanted to play ARMS seriously, who plays Nintendo games seriously? What do you think this is? Smash Brothers? One of the more annoying things when the game first came out, and I think this is kind of what hurt ARMS in some aspects, is that although it got a lot of cool improvements later, I think it didn't get it at launch, which unfortunately for a fighting game in 2017, you really need to make your foot in the door a really loud hit. It needs to be either a big impression or you need to kick that door wide open. And I think ARMS eventually got there by the end of the year. And some would say, well, it's only 6 months. That shouldn't kill a game. You say that, but you also got to remember Nintendo had a pretty stacked year in terms of games. Splatoon came out the next month. Then you had Mario Odyssey and then Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You had a variety of titles that came out. They just went, hey, listen, this ain't the only thing you want to play on Switch. Now, granted, I don't necessarily think that Splatoon 2 killed ARMS momentum, considering they're two different types of games and two different, completely different genres. But what would you rather care for? Would you rather care for a new movie or a sequel to one of your favorite movies of all time, right? That's kind of what Splatoon 2 was. One of the features that they added that I absolutely love and wish more Nintendo games would do is the ability to button map your entire controller. Do you know how much it sucks that you can't button map certain controllers all the way? ARMS lets you customize every single button, but once again, it was a post-game update. There's also a little bit of a balancing issue, which, although isn't anything new for a fighting game, let's be real here, it's not necessarily something fun people want to deal with. I do think ARMS has an amazing lore and interesting characters that come from unique backgrounds. Just to talk about a couple of my favorite things is the theme itself. It's funny that it follows the same Nintendo-like thing of taking its main theme and remixing it and changing it into some sort of variation for almost every stage, that it creates a very unique experience for every character in every stage, and the game overall feels better for it. Another thing I want to talk about is some of my favorite characters. I mentioned Lolopop already, but I've recently become more of a fan of characters like Mechanica. I already like Min Min and Kid Cobra. I also think it's kind of funny that each of them have their own professions, with like Ribbon Girl being an idol and Kid Cobra being a social media influencer. You know, in retrospect, Nintendo's been throwing a lot more social media influencer characters in their games recently, like Raihan and Pokemon Sword and Shield. And if you want to go into the VTuber aspect, you got Iono from Scarlet and Violet. Does that mean we're gonna get Instagram models in the next Splatoon or Pokemon games? Oh God. Well, then again, we have Elise from Black and White, so I guess that wouldn't be too far. Wait a minute, Pokemon, get out of here. Get out of here. This is about ARMS, damn it. But I absolutely love the fact that the characters have their own characters outside of fighting. And there's a little bit of lore about how certain characters were made. Like, for example, Helix, which is some sort of DNA experiment. It's implied through the lore that Dr. Cole is the one who created him, on top of him creating things like Headlock and the fact that she was also married to Max Brass and they got a divorce. These are a whole bunch of cool lore things that get brought up, and I would have loved to see them in my graphic novel that never came out. Getting into these matches, you would think it'd be some slow crawl of a one punch here, a one punch there, but they managed to make the characters feel quick and snappy with each punch, giving multiple different types of arms different punches and elemental effects kept the game from feeling fresh. On top of the extra modes they added, the headlock scramble, the free-for-all, hoops, skill shot, and volleyball. You had a variety of game modes to keep you entertained if you just weren't cool with the boxing 1-to-1 every single match. And party crashes were amazing. These cool events where you would fight to rep the character of choice. And if you won, you got a huge payout. And some of you might ask, well, what was that huge payout for? Well, getting arms, in fact. And this is kind of where one of the bigger problems kind of kick in. See, eventually they would add a mode called tournament mode that allowed you to get access to every arm from the jump. And it was great for locals and whether or not you wanted to run like your grassroots community style events. But in the early days of the system, and still if you're playing single player, the way you had to get arms for every single character was you would have to play a game called Skill Shot, and you would have to do it for every single character, because even if you unlocked all the arms for one character, it doesn't necessarily guarantee all the arms for every character. And what made it worse, it wasn't that you had to just unlock all the arms, you had to unlock all the arms twice for each character, because they got like plus versions, which essentially were better, more damaging versions of the same arm. So needless to say, I did all of that. like a crazy person. And then eventually they added something like the gallery that allowed you to unlock pictures. So you had to grind out more fights and party crashes and just general free-for-alls to get more currency in order to buy these photos. And some of these photos, I'm going to respectfully say, were worth it. These were all ideas to keep a person interested in the game and to keep playing. And I don't intrinsically think they're bad, but the grind for some of this could be considered kind of tedious, especially considering going through the story mode was the other way you could earn currency. And I'm gonna be honest with you, the story mode, although I enjoy it for what it is, and it got better with patches, leaves a lot to be desired for a game with story-based fighting characters. Now granted, it's on the same level as something like a Killer Instinct or Mortal Kombat. You go through a series of fights, fighting individual characters, and at the end you fight a boss character. Same thing Street Fighter does. And in later versions of the game, they updated it to where if you fought it on a certain difficulty, you could trigger different fights towards the end of the game, which is really just 2 to 3 extra fights. Not bad, but once again, would have liked something more, especially considering they mentioned that certain characters have certain relationships with each other due to their outside of fighting professions. On top of having characters like Dr. Coyle, who were introduced later on, that kind of added this weird element of lore of how people even gain these arms in the first place and what people have decided to do with this technology and body dysmorphia. Body dysmorphia? I don't know. The point is, there was more to be desired. And granted, the game sold relatively well, hitting over 2 million units as of this video. But because we haven't really heard anything else about the game since 2017, 2018, it kind of makes people worried that, hey, they're not going to do anything else with the IP. Now, granted, we did get Min Min in DLC for Smash Brothers, and we also got Springman as a trophy. So it's not like they just completely forgot about the IP. And I'm hoping with the Switch 2 we get a sequel, because it's been, 7 years and I want a sequel, damn it. But I kind of want to just give this talk and conversation about ARMS to show that this game is absolutely worth being played, and it can generate some of the hypest moments I've had in a while. I don't necessarily get into fighting games as much as I used to, because let's be real here, the biggest struggle modern fighting games have with an older generation is that if you didn't grow up playing it, that means you have to learn an entire new fighting system with completely different characters and a completely different new console generation that you may not even be used to. And sometimes that's daunting for older players. ARMS isn't necessarily anything outside of that boat, but it's something that gravitated and connected with me to the point that I thought it was worth investing in. And I'm glad I did, because it created an experience that I don't think can be replicated so easily. So I look forward to hopefully an ARMS 2 on the Nintendo Switch 2. And for those who don't know, go pick it up and try it out. You might be surprised what you get into. Plus, if there is a sequel announced, you got something, you got a little refresher before you get into the new game. Anywho, I hope I've openly expressed my feelings and thoughts on ARMS, and although it has its problems, I generally do believe it was a great game, just kind of marred with a lack of content and a couple of design changes that can easily be fixed in a sequel. Life's a game, play to win, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace!